The massive viewing screen dominated the Galactic Council chamber, displaying what many council members considered a joke. Admiral Tom Miller stood quietly at the podium, his weathered face betraying no emotion as alien diplomats pointed and laughed at the holographic display of Earth's defense fleet. "These are your warships." The Grand Speaker of the Council, a towering blue-skinned alien, leaned forward in his seat. His multiple eyes blinked in rapid succession, a sign of amusement in his species. "They're hardly bigger than our cargo shuttles." Miller clasped his hands behind his back, a stance familiar to any military veteran. The council chamber, filled with representatives from 50 spacefaring civilizations, continued their barely contained laughter. The human ships, displayed in perfect detail above them, looked like toys compared to the massive dreadnoughts that typically patrolled council space. "Our largest vessel, the Star Defender, spans 12 kilometers. Another council member added, their crystalline form gleaming under the chamber lights. "Your flagship appears to be barely half a kilometer in length. The Armstrong is precisely 400 meters long," Miller confirmed, his voice steady and professional. He had expected this reaction. It was the same one humanity had faced throughout its history. Underestimation followed by sudden, shocking realization. The Council's strategic advisor, a reptilian being in ornate armor, pulled up comparison charts. "Your entire fleet could fit inside one of our standard battle cruisers. How do you expect to defend your territory with such limited resources?" Miller noticed a few council members whispering among themselves, likely placing bets on how quickly humanity would petition for protection treaties. Earth had seen this before, powerful civilizations offering protection that quickly turned into exploitation. "We manage," Miller replied simply, allowing a small smile to cross his face. He knew what they couldn't see: the quantum computers packed into impossibly small spaces, the drone swarms waiting in compressed launch bays, the energy weapons that defied conventional physics. The Grand Speaker raised his hand for silence. "Humanity has shown remarkable progress in reaching the stars. But these vessels—" He paused, searching for diplomatic words. "They suggest you might benefit from council guidance, perhaps a technology exchange program." "With all due respect," Miller responded, "we're comfortable with our current designs." A burst of laughter echoed through the chamber. The strategic advisor actually slapped his armored tail against the floor in amusement. "Comfortable? Your ships would barely register as threats to our defense systems." Miller remembered the classified briefings, the successful test runs, the simulations that had made hardened generals whistle in appreciation. But here, in this chamber of giants, he maintained his calm demeanor. Let them laugh. Let them assume. History had taught humanity the value of being underestimated. "We look forward to peaceful cooperation with the Council," Miller concluded, bowing slightly. As he turned to leave the chamber, he caught fragments of conversations. "Such tiny ships. They'll be begging for protection within a cycle. At least they're brave, coming here with those toys." Miller's communicator buzzed quietly. A message from Earth Command. "Defensive systems tested and ready. All ships at full capacity." He allowed himself another small smile. The Council would learn soon enough that when it came to human ingenuity, size wasn't everything. Sometimes, the smallest packages contained the biggest surprises. The emergency meeting room of Earth's Security Council hummed with tension. On the main screen, the massive form of Admiral Drek of the Drachnid Empire loomed over them, his scaled face twisted in what passed for a smile among his kind. "Your species has 24 Earth hours to surrender," Drek announced, his translator making his growling voice sound almost musical. "The Drachnid Empire claims this sector as its territory. Your modest fleet would only be destroyed if you resist." President Wilson stood at the central podium, her face calm despite the threat. Around her, military advisors and political leaders from Earth's United Nations whispered urgently. The Drachnid Empire's reputation was well known. They had conquered 3 star systems in the past year alone. "The Empire's smallest battleship is 8 kilometers long," General Thompson muttered, reviewing tactical data on his tablet. Their main fleet includes 50 such vessels. Admiral Miller, fresh from his return from the Galactic Council meeting, stepped forward. "Madam President, request permission to show them why size doesn't matter." "You saw their scans," another advisor interrupted. "Their ships have energy shields that could withstand multiple direct hits from our largest weapons." Miller pulled up classified footage on the room's secondary screens. What they saw and what we actually have are two very different things. The footage showed a test firing of Earth's newest weapon systems, technology that had been carefully hidden from alien scans. On the main screen, Admiral Drek was growing impatient. "Perhaps a demonstration is in order." He gestured, and a beam of energy lanced out from his flagship, destroying an unmanned research station near Jupiter. That was only 5% power. President Wilson glanced at Miller, who nodded slightly. She straightened her jacket and addressed the alien commander. "Admiral Drek, humanity has survived countless threats throughout its history. Each time, someone underestimated us. Each time, they regretted it." Drek's laugh shook his massive command chair. "Brave words from a species whose largest warship could fit in our vessel's waste disposal unit. You have 24 hours. Choose wisely." The transmission cut off. Admiral Miller, President Wilson turned to face him. "You've been oddly calm about all this. What aren't you telling us?" Miller activated a secure holographic display, showing the true capabilities of Earth's fleet. The room fell silent as they saw what their tiny ships could really do. "We knew this day would come," Miller explained. "We built accordingly." "Those aren't just ships," he continued, zooming in on the Armstrong schematics. "They're carriers, weapon platforms, and command centers packed into frames, so small our enemies wouldn't see them as threats. Every vessel is a Trojan horse." President Wilson studied the data, her expression shifting from concern to determination. "How long have you been planning for this?" "Since we first detected alien signals," Miller replied. "We learned from Earth's history. The smaller force doesn't win by playing by the larger force's rules." The president nodded slowly. "Then let's show Admiral Drek why humanity's greatest strength has always been our ability to surprise those who underestimate us." As the council chamber erupted into activity, Miller sent a coded message to his fleet. "Operation Small Packages Go. All ships prepare for combat protocols." The Armstrong's engineering bay hummed with activity as Chief Engineer Robert Wells led the final systems check. Holographic displays showed the ship's true nature, a marvel of human ingenuity hidden behind a deceptively small frame. "Show me the drone bays," he ordered, and the display shifted to reveal rows upon rows of compact combat drones. Each one was barely larger than a coffee table, yet packed with more firepower than a 20th century battleship. The entire bay had been compressed using advanced spatial folding technology, allowing thousands of drones to fit in a space that alien scans registered as auxiliary storage. "Quantum computing cores at 100% efficiency," reported his assistant, Mark. "The AI targeting systems are running final calibrations." They watched as the ship's artificial intelligence ran millions of combat simulations per second, learning and adapting to every possible scenario. Wells remembered the early days of the project, when everyone said it couldn't be done. "Your ships are too small," they'd said. "You'll never fit enough weapons to matter." But humanity had learned long ago that bigger wasn't always better. "Check the phase shift generators," Wells commanded. The hologram changed to show the ship's most closely guarded secret, technology that could temporarily shift portions of the vessel into subspace, making it appear far smaller than it actually was. When activated, the Armstrong could deploy weapons and launch bays that technically existed in another dimension. "Sir," Mark called out, pointing to another display. "Look at these scans of the Drachnid ships." The massive alien vessels relied on brute force. Huge engines, enormous weapon arrays, and thick armor. But their size made them predictable, slow to maneuver. Wells smiled as he watched his crew perform their final checks. The Armstrong's engine room itself was a testament to human creativity. They had developed microfusion reactors that generated more power than the massive engines of alien ships, all while taking up a fraction of the space. "Remember when we first tested the drone swarms?" Mark asked, grinning. The memory was clear. Hundreds of tiny ships emerging from seemingly nowhere, each one guided by advanced AI that could outmaneuver any living pilot. The brass couldn't believe their eyes. Wells chuckled, kept asking where we'd hidden all the drones. The answer was simple. They hadn't hidden them at all. They'd just figured out how to fold space itself. His tablet buzzed with a priority message from Admiral Miller. Engineering report status. Wells looked around his domain one last time. The phase shift generators were primed. The quantum cores were running perfectly. The drone bays were ready to deploy their deadly swarms. Most importantly, every system was invisible to standard alien scans. "All systems green," he replied. "The Armstrong is ready to show the Drachnids why humanity's ships are small by choice, not necessity." As he sent the message, Wells patted the nearest bulkhead affectionately. Let them laugh at the size of human ships. Let them mock their primitive appearance. Soon enough, they'd learn that humanity's greatest weapon had always been its ability to think differently. "Begin final countdown," he ordered. "It's time to show the galaxy why you should never judge a book by its cover." The vast emptiness of space lit up as 50 Drachnid warships emerged from hyperspace. Each vessel was a mountain of metal and energy shields, their massive forms blocking out distant stars. Admiral Drek stood on his command bridge, watching with amusement as human sensors detected his arrival. "Look at them scatter," he rumbled, observing the small human ships spreading out in an unusual formation. The Earth vessels looked like insects compared to his mighty fleet. His tactical officer reported that the largest human ship was barely visible on their main display. "They're positioning themselves in some sort of grid pattern," his second-in-command noted. "Strange tactics for such a small force." Admiral Miller, aboard the Armstrong, watched his own tactical display with focused intensity. The human ships had taken their planned positions, each vessel maintaining precise distances from the others. To the Drachnids, it must have looked like panic, a handful of tiny ships spreading out as if trying to avoid being caught in a single shot. "All ships report ready, Admiral," his tactical officer announced. "Phase shift generators are powered up. Drone bays are prepped for immediate deployment." The Drachnid fleet moved forward in a standard arrow formation, their massive ships arranged to bring maximum firepower to bear on any target. It was a formation that had broken planetary defenses and scattered enemy fleets across 3 star systems. "Their formation is so predictable," Miller murmured. Status of the quantum targeting systems. "All green, sir." Each ship's AI has mapped likely firing solutions for the entire Drachnid fleet. On his flagship, Admiral Drek was growing impatient with the humans' apparent stalling. "Send them one final warning," he ordered. "Then we'll show them what real warships can do." The message boomed across all frequencies. "This is your final chance to surrender. Your scattered pebbles cannot hope to stand against the might of the Drachnid Empire." Miller allowed himself a small smile. "Send our response," he ordered, just as planned. A single message returned to the Drachnid fleet. "We accept your challenge. Size isn't everything." Such arrogance. Drek roared with laughter. "Battle stations. We'll destroy these toys and take this system for the Empire." As the Drachnid fleet began their attack run, Miller sent a simple command to his fleet. "Execute Phase 1. The space between the fleets was about to become very interesting indeed. The tiny human ships might have looked like scattered pebbles, but those pebbles were about to reveal themselves as keys to unleashing something far more dangerous. "Time to show them," Miller said quietly, "why humanity chose to build small." The first shot from the Drachnid fleet illuminated space, a massive energy beam that could have vaporized a small moon. Admiral Drek watched with satisfaction as it headed straight for the nearest human vessel. But the beam passed through empty space. The human ship had somehow shifted, leaving only a ghost-like image behind. Impossible, Drek's tactical officer shouted. They're using some kind of phase technology. Before the Drachnids could process this surprise, the tiny human ships began their response. The Armstrong's hull seemed to ripple, and suddenly space itself opened up around it. From dimensional pockets that shouldn't exist, swarms of combat drones poured forth, thousands from each ship. Multiple small craft detected. The Drachnid sensor's operator's voice cracked with panic. Numbers increasing. Sir, we're tracking over 10,000 hostile contacts. Miller watched from the Armstrong's bridge as his carefully planned trap unfolded. Each drone was piloted by quantum AI, moving with precision that no organic pilot could match. The massive Drachnid ships, designed to battle equally large opponents, found their targeting systems overwhelmed by the sheer number of small, fast-moving targets, energy reading off the scale. A Drachnid officer screamed. The human drones were combining their fire, their seemingly weak weapons linking together into devastating attack patterns. A blast pierced the shields of a Drachnid cruiser, cutting through its hull like paper. Impossible. Drek slammed his fist on his command chair. Their weapons couldn't possibly. Status report. 3 ships critically damaged, sir. The human drones are targeting our weapon ports with surgical precision. They're moving too fast for our tracking systems. The space around Earth's fleet had transformed into a deadly dance of light and energy. Each human ship was now revealed as a carrier, deploying weapons and systems that had been hidden in folded space. What had looked like a scattered formation of tiny vessels was actually a carefully positioned launch grid for the most sophisticated drone swarm ever created. The children had fangs after all, Drek muttered, watching another of his ships fall to the coordinated drone attacks. His mighty fleet, which had seemed so overwhelming just minutes ago, was now fighting for survival against an enemy they had grievously underestimated. Miller sent new attack coordinates to his fleet. Execute Phase 2, he ordered calmly. Show them what else these tiny ships can do. The space around the human vessels began to distort again, and Drek felt true fear for the first time in his military career. They hadn't even revealed everything yet. Admiral Drek's mighty fleet was in chaos. His ships, designed for grand battles between massive vessels, floundered against the swarms of human drones. The battle that should have been an easy victory had turned into a nightmare. Shields failing on decks 5 through 8. An officer shouted, "We can't track these things. They're too small, too fast." The human drones moved like a living cloud, their AI pilots coordinating attacks with impossible precision. When Drachnid ships fired their main weapons, the drones simply scattered and reformed, not a single shot finding its mark. Status report, Drek demanded, watching another of his ships fall silent. 15 ships severely damaged, sir. 7 completely disabled. The human vessels. They're not just launching drones. They're using some kind of energy weapon we've never seen before. The Armstrong and its fleet had revealed their second surprise. Quantum-linked energy beams lanced out from the human ships, passing through the Drachnid shields as if they weren't there. The supposedly primitive human vessels were cutting through the pride of the Empire's fleet like a hot knife through butter. How? Drek whispered, watching his tactical display fill with red warning indicators. Their ships are so small. On the Armstrong, Miller directed the battle with calm efficiency. Each human ship acted as a focal point for the drone swarms, their quantum computers coordinating attacks faster than any organic mind could process. "Target their engine cores," Miller ordered. "Let's show them what real precision looks like." The drones responded instantly, concentrating their fire on specific points of the massive Drachnid ships. What the alien vessels had in size, they lacked in maneuverability. They were like giant targets, unable to dodge the lightning-fast strikes. "Sir," Drek's second-in-command called out, "we're detecting power buildups in the human fleet. Something big is coming." The space around Earth's ships began to ripple again as they activated their final weapon system. The phase shift generators reached full power, And suddenly the human vessels seemed to exist in multiple places at once, each ghost image launching its own attacks. Full retreat, Drek finally ordered, his pride shattered like his fleet's defenses. Get us out of here. As the surviving Drachnid ships turned to flee, Miller allowed himself a small smile. The mighty alien fleet, which had arrived expecting an easy victory, was running from ships they had called toys just hours before. Sometimes, Miller mused, watching the Drachnids retreat, the biggest surprises come in the smallest packages. The Galactic Council chamber was silent, a stark contrast to the laughter that had filled it just days before. The same representatives who had mocked Earth's fleet now sat in stunned attention as battle footage played on the main screen. Admiral Miller stood at the same podium where he had endured their ridicule. This time, no one was laughing at the size of human ships. The Drachnid fleet, the Grand Speaker announced, his multiple eyes wide with disbelief, lost 32 capital ships. Their survivors speak of drone swarms that moved like living shadows, of weapons that ignored their strongest shields, and of human vessels that seemed to exist in multiple places at once. The strategic advisor, who had slapped his tail in amusement at Earth's tiny fleet, now sat rigid with attention. We may have misjudged humanity's technological capabilities, he admitted. 16 different species have already requested military alliances with Earth, another council member added. They're calling it the silent revolution in warfare technology. Miller kept his face neutral, but inside he felt a deep satisfaction. The footage showed Drachnid dreadnoughts, once considered invincible, being systematically dismantled by weapons they never saw coming. The Grand Speaker rose from his seat. Admiral Miller, the Council owes humanity an apology. We assumed that small meant weak. We let our preconceptions blind us to innovation. Size isn't everything, Miller replied, allowing himself a small smile. Humanity learned long ago that victory doesn't always go to the biggest or strongest. Sometimes it goes to those who think differently. Your ships, the strategic advisor leaned forward. They're not really that small, are they? They just appear that way. Miller nodded. Phase shift technology. Most of our systems exist in folded space. What you see is just the tip of the iceberg. And the drone swarms. Quantum AI-controlled, each one smarter than an organic pilot. All of them linked together in ways your sensors couldn't detect. The council chamber erupted in excited discussion. Species that had dismissed humanity as a minor power now saw them as technological pioneers. The same ships they had laughed at were now being studied as the future of space warfare. Perhaps, the Grand Speaker concluded, it's time we learned from Earth, instead of the other way around. As Miller left the chamber, he received a message from Earth Command. Phase shift generators primed. New drone designs ready for testing. The galaxy's about to get a lot more interesting. He smiled, thinking of how far humanity had come. They had turned their greatest perceived weakness into their strongest advantage. In a galaxy of giants, sometimes the smallest ships cast the longest shadows.